Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to introduce to you today Phyllis Mufson on the Resume Storyteller podcast. Phyllis has helped hundreds of people choose and develop very satisfying careers. She's trained in three things: as a certified coach, a small business consultant, and as a certified RIM healer, which stands for Regenerating Images in Memory. She helps people who seek clarity about what's next and those who need help forming their passions into a career. Phyllis, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
And thank you for inviting me, Virginia.
I've been a huge fan for a long time. I did not know that you held 3 different certifications. I'd love to hear from you. Can you provide us with a quick overview of how you came to be in this role?
Well, I'm what's called in our field a natural. This is like, I could tell this story long. I'm going to give you like the short version.
Okay.
Like when I was in my 20s, there was a joke among my friends that all a guy had to do to earn $20,000 more a year was to date Phyllis. And
so
that
funny.
was because I was so curious about people's careers. I was always asking them questions. Frequently, they'd invite me to go shopping, ask me to go shopping with them for their interview outfits.
You were a coach before there were even coaches.
What?
You were a coach before you probably even knew what it was.
Yeah. Like if the boss was coming to dinner, I'd be like, well, did you find out what he likes to drink? I'd be partnering with people to do role plays. So looking back, it's really easy to see that this would be a natural thing for me to do. But when I was in the middle of it, like when other people are in the middle of it, I didn't see it that way at all. Like once I finally figured it out, my friends were like, "Oh yes, that's perfect for you." But when I was in transition, not so much.
Oh, I know. Yeah, you lose the forest through the trees when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was it that? Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just thinking that what was going on with me is like so common. Is I didn't pay any attention to what I was doing so easily or naturally because it was easy.
That's right.
Right. Yeah.
And that's, a lot of people think that it sort of has to be tough when they're figuring out, they just take for granted that the things that come easy to them.
Yeah, exactly. And often that's that is what comes naturally to you is a great place to build from.
That's a very good point.
You're acting from your strongest aptitudes and So in my youth, I was an artist and actually earned a living. And then I worked in marketing and public relations, did campaigns for professional service firms. And while I was doing that, I started running goal setting and moving into action workshops for people in transition. And then my first job in careers was working for Wright Associates. And they actually hired me over people. I didn't have any academic background or credentials or experience, but they hired me because they saw me as a natural. And
wow, yeah.
Yeah, and since then, I've gotten a lot of credentials and have worked in the field for a long time, but I feel like I'm extremely blessed to be able to do something that I love and I'm very well suited to. And that's kind of my sense of mission is I want that for everyone.
For everyone.
Yeah.
I have never, the word certified RIM healer is something I'd never come across before. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you incorporate that into your coaching practice?
Sure. RIM healing is something that's been around for a while, but they only started teaching it not too long ago. Like I actually went through the first certification class. And it's a group of methods that come out of other kind of healing practices that already exist.
Okay.
But take advantage of using your imagination and your brain's visualization abilities, like how in sports, when somebody wants to learn a new technique, they'll demonstrate it, and then they'll practice it in visualization many times, right? And they found that, like, somebody who just has a new technique demonstrated to them, about 55% of them will be able to do it right. But if they visualize it's about 100%. So it's because the brain, I'm being like not technically, but the brain basically can't tell the difference between a real or a vividly imagined event. And so in RIM, can be used to help people who are blocked. It can be used for physical pain. It can be used for mental hurt and pain. And basically, you can go back and you reimagine an event differently in a new future. And it doesn't change your memories, but it changes the reactivity. You're not reactive to it anymore.
And have you found this to be effective for people tackling career change in your practice?
Yeah, I do.
Visualize
not all of my clients want to do it, but many of them do. And where it comes in handy particularly is for dealing with fear, or if someone was laid off and then they feel like they've lost their self-confidence.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And,
wow.
And it seems like it's something that just makes the process run much more easily. And also not for situations like that. Like maybe somebody is just completely not getting along with their supervisor.
Right.
Find out what's being triggered and then, be able to get over that. So
that is fascinating.
So it's not something for everyone, but for the people who do it, often it's something they like a lot and ask for.
Right. And it's part of your toolkit. I love that. So it sounds like you work with, a diverse group of people facing lots of different challenges. What I wanted to ask you is, overall, do you see, or what do you see as a couple of major challenges that are facing people that are looking to make career change or looking to job search? Is there something sort of a common challenge that you see that they're coming across?
Well, I was thinking about this earlier, and I think that's something that is affecting everyone. Like people have their individual issues, but
sure,
is the really accelerating and rapid technology changes and that are changing things politically, they're changing things economically, and they're changing how job search works. And most people are just not that up on it. They expect the job search to be the same as when they did it the last time.
Yeah.
And the fundamentals don't change. It's about making connections and targeting companies and finding the way to
hiring
present
people.
Yourself. Present yourself the best way. But how the initial contacts have made are changed, and resumes are run through scanners. So often, when I speak to them at first, they've been experiencing a whole lot of frustration. Like maybe they're really extremely skilled, but they're just not up on the changes. Right. And also, when they're changing careers, or even when they're picking their first careers, they're not yet thinking about that this is going to continue. that this level of accelerated change will continue. So they're still thinking that they're going to get a credential or they're going to choose a career and they'll be there for the rest of their lives. And some people will, but a lot less often than it used to be. So I encourage people to be thinking more about, what's the constellation of abilities that they like to use the most, developing clusters of skills that they can then use in what they want to do the most now, but then they can regroup them and use them in different situations so that they have a lot more flexibility and longevity in what they're doing.
Yeah, I just came across a client yesterday, in fact, and she said, "You know what? I need this next job to be my 10-year job because I've got 10 more years left in me." And I said, I think that what you need to think about are 10-year relationships and a series of 10-year skills, because the chances of staying in the same role or the same company even for 10 years is might be wistful thinking. That's what you hope for. It just doesn't happen as much anymore. But I love that the constellation, you can reshift those skills or regroup them in different ways to pursue your next opportunity.
Yeah, and once you've done that, I mean, it can sound kind of daunting, but once you have done that, it gives such self-confidence and so much flexibility. Like I sometimes suggest to people, once we have done a bunch of work and identify, their core abilities and the skills they want to use the most, and how they want to live and envision their future, all the standard stuff. Sometimes I suggest to them that they think about, like their current career as design thinking, or like planning a menu or cooking. So here I am in the land of very mixed metaphors. I'm trying to find my way back.
I like stick with the food one.
But like maybe they have four key skills they really enjoy using. And so maybe they're going to put all of them into one pot and make a stew, or maybe this time around they're going to use one skill primarily and put the others in the back burner. Yeah, maybe this is easier to understand. It's like if they're public speakers and they also like to write, and
right.
They have a couple of topics that they're good in. So are you going to mix it all up, or are you going to be mostly focused on public speaking? Or are you going to look for something where you get to do all of it? And then you can just keep mixing them up in different combinations, depending on what's going on. And, and maybe for a while you'll be working for somebody else, and maybe for a while you're going to be self-employed. But it's not as challenging as when your entire identity is involved in one role, in one industry, in one job.
I love that. And I've found that most people that do end up making career pivots or career shifts, this is what they've done. They've had a smorgasbord of skills, and they've used one more than the other, and they sort of take turns focusing on each one or a combination of them.
Yeah. Yeah,
and also, so now I'm hungry.
Come for a career change, they think it has to be something entirely new, which I have worked with people like that. I worked with a journalist who became a sailboat captain, but for the most part, it's what you're talking about. Like somebody will be really unhappy. I worked with a woman who was actually quite well known, and she had this technology startup and with a partner, and they'd be in the magazines, but she really was unhappy. And, there it turned out like when you drill down, what was bugging her was like, she's really not suited to be a partner. And, and she was able to create a job for herself, with a large national funding agency. And they gave her, created a portfolio of startups in her field for her to manage. And so it's kind of like she had her own business inside of a business.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that was much better for her. So it was kind of like she was actually doing something very similar, but it was a different format.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Not a career 180, just a little micro pivot.
Yeah.
No, I love that. So what advice would you give someone? I'm sure you give lots of advice, but what's one really first solid piece of advice that you would give someone who's thinking about making a career move? How could they get started?
Well, the place to start is with the fundamentals, and in a career move, that involves a deep look at yourself and, finding out, getting clear about your values, accepting, articulating your personal style, like not how you wish you were, but how you actually are.
How you really are. Mm-hmm.
How you really are, yeah. And like what you bring to the table, and of what you bring to the table, what do you want to bring to the table? Also, how do you want to live? What kind of lifestyle do you want? Do you want to travel a lot? Do you want to be of service to a certain population? Like lots and lots of questions. And, like when I'm working with people, I might do one assessment or I might do a bunch, depending on how much they already know about themselves. And so
is there a self-assessment that
people I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I find that people have not done that thoroughly enough. So,
yeah.
So they've gotten into, they start more with a list of options, and they're researching them and talking to people and getting more and more confused because they don't have the criteria.
Right. It's sort of putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different assessments out there. If somebody were to, sort of have no clarity around any of this, is there one that you recommend as a good starting point?
It's not how I think, so an answer isn't coming to me, because where I got stuck immediately was when somebody has no idea, because I know that they all have lots of ideas. Really, they're just thinking it's impossible or not for me, or so I'm kind of sidestepping your question a bit, and then saying maybe the first thing is really, getting to the place of emotional safety where they feel free to explore.
So you're saying, so people really do have some clarity. There's roadblocks that are keeping them from expressing that or articulating that.
Yeah, it's more like when I talk with somebody, like I have a lot of things I want to know, and they'll usually know like 50 or 70 or 80% of it, and then we'll fill it in.
I see. So the assessment that you choose depends on where the gaps are. Where the gaps
are, exactly. Yeah,
that makes sense.
And also exactly the kind of thing that we were talking about earlier about myself is like, there's a lot of stuff that people are doing that's so natural to them, they're not even thinking of it. That's important. And so having an outside pair of eyes can be helpful.
Yeah, just for that additional reflection. So what about the person? I mean, we've talked about people that are beginning their job search. What about people that have been job hunting and it's just not going well? Is your advice to help them get back on the rails, is that a little different than you would give to someone who's just starting out, or is it the same?
Well, I think in this case, I'd want to know what it is they're doing that's working and what they're doing that's not working, and figuring out what's not working, and then, because there's an aspect of job search that's kind of like pretty straightforward. Like if If you
more
have,
mechanical.
If you have the skills, right, and you have a good resume, you have your LinkedIn profile, you're being somewhat active. If things aren't working, then where is it? Are you getting interviews? If you're not getting interviews, let's see what's the matter there. Yeah, it's actually, like you were saying, there's something that's very by the numbers about it. And, and then it's a question of, it's not exactly like that, but it's a question of how much time are you putting in?
You examine the entire process and figure out to determine where the break is happening.
Yeah. Like sometimes it's pretty simple. I'm thinking of a woman who, she was almost 70 and she had her own business and she wanted to go internal and work in healthcare administration. Mm-hmm. And so you'd think, oh, this is something about her being 70. But actually, it seemed like she was doing things really right. But when I did role play with her, she was coming across so authoritative, like this is how we do things. And she actually wasn't that kind of person. She was a lot of fun. So I had to help her relax from coming across in just exactly the expert role and become more human. And that didn't take very long, and then she was fine.
That's interesting. So she probably came to you suspecting, and she probably suspected there was age discrimination going on.
Yeah,
when in fact it was her tone. Yeah. And I come across. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, you come across. I'm sure you come across that all the time. I mean, everyone does.
Oh yeah, and the one I see most people come to me because they want help with their resume, and this woman was getting she was getting interviews, and the more we talk, if you're getting interviews and it's not your resume, how far are you getting in the interviews? And it was revealed that she wasn't getting past the video interviewing piece. Phone screen was great, couldn't get to that second hoop. And so I referred her out elsewhere because I don't coach on that. But there's so many different points in the process where there can be breaks, but they're not huge breaks. They can be rectified. But examining where you are in the process, what's working and what's not, it's very revealing. So Phyllis, what about people? We alluded to this before. People who have a lot of different skills, and most people do. They're very diverse, and they're eager to sort of cast a very wide net and perhaps go in a number of different directions. How do you guide them to focus, or what kind of advice do you share with them?
Well, I'm a little bit like that myself. So I have sympathy because I'm interested in a lot of different things.
And everything, right.
Right. So I had several thoughts as soon as you asked me that question. And the first one, it goes back to the cooktop idea, cooktop idea, like laying out all of these different interests and skills and seeing which ones group together and which ones are appealing right now, and, what can you get started on in a very small way to see if it feels right? Because often people who are like that are just curious. There are people who like having a lot of flexibility. And maybe I'm just guessing, and I would always check, that they're the kind of people who don't like to be tied down to one thing.
Yep.
So I would try an approach that leaves a lot of flexibility and thinking about don't think about the rest of your life. Think about what you want to do now and what might happen after that. And, and not saying you can only pick one. Like, I think the author Barbara Sher, I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she wrote a lot of books about, finding things that you love and creating a livelihood out of it. She says life is long and it's also wide. So, for somebody like that, maybe they don't want to feel hemmed in, but they want to feel like they can get to a bunch of it, but maybe not all at the same time. Because you can get very stuck if you try to do too much at once. Right.
Or if you feel cornered, you won't.
Yeah.
That won't last. And I find that actually when the people that come to me saying that they can go in a number of different directions are also just very worried about getting their next job. So they don't want to limit themselves.
Well, that
more
is
of a fear.
Almost the opposite. Yeah. Because you can have a lot in your life, but to present yourself as many different things is extremely confusing to other people.
Yeah,
and it's not attractive to them. So like you do need to actually pick. And then
even if it's just on paper and not in your brain,
build a case for yourself. The strongest possible.
Yeah, you're right. People want to put you in a box, so figure out what box works for you for that moment.
Yeah. So
no, I agree.
It's just like in my practice, I work primarily with career changers, and then also with people who are solopreneurs. Like people who have a service or they're consultants or other coaches. I help them build their businesses. And often the people who are solopreneurs, like when I start talking about developing a niche, and that's like, oh no, because I don't only want to do that. And, I'll say like, that's absolutely fine. This is just how, we're going to find out how to present yourself. And then you'll still get to do the rest of it because that's just the way it works.
That is such good advice, right? And you can advertise within certain niches, do your marketing within certain niches, but that's not to mean that other people aren't going to come through that are outside those niches.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we talked about this very briefly when you were mentioning the 70-year-old woman who had an authoritative tone. I hear so much about all sorts of discrimination, but age discrimination seems to be the most popular, probably because it impacts everyone, regardless of gender, ethnicity, all of that. What are your thoughts on age discrimination when it comes to hiring practices? And I guess it could be too young or too old.
Yeah, most of my clients are mid-age and beyond.
Okay.
So I can speak to the other. I directed a college career center, but I think I'd like to start with the older ones.
Okay.
And first to acknowledge that is really real. Yes, age discrimination exists, and it exists like in the legal sense. And then what's much more pervasive is age bias.
Yeah.
And what I find, like you had mentioned this earlier, is when somebody older comes, often the first thing they'll say is that, they can't get a job because of their age. And I know that that's not completely true, because if they were completely convinced of that, they would not be calling me, right? They still have hope. And
have hope.
Yeah. And so while it's real, when I examine what it is they're doing, I always find things that they're doing that will feed into bias and that can be corrected. So like, first I want to say there are positive as well as negative biases, because people tend to look at older workers and think they have good judgment about people, that they're maybe more reliable.
Good work ethic.
Good work ethic. Often when somebody's older, they've had a variety of roles, so they can be more, they can handle more different kinds of things in a job. this may or may not be true, but that's a positive bias.
That's the bias, right?
Yeah, and then on the negative side, they may think that the person's going to cost more money than they want to spend, that they may not be flexible and willing to work in a collaborative way with younger managers or other coworkers, that they may not be up to date on technologically, or if somebody is close to retirement age, that they're already there in their mind. They're not going to be learning and growing. So knowing that in advance, you can present yourself in ways that will just neutralize those concerns in people's minds. So this isn't to say that there aren't some places where they actually really are looking for somebody younger. But if you are active in social media and presenting yourself as learning and growing on LinkedIn or in other ways, they're not going to be thinking of you as somebody who's behind the times.
That's
and
right.
If you can present stories like you're the career storyteller, so you know how important this is.
Right.
That if you can develop anecdotes from your recent history that show you collaborating, that show you being flexible, that show you learning and innovating, or whatever is your strength, that shows that you're still engaged and vital. When people hear that, even if they are having a prejudice, they'll think of you as an exception.
That's right. And you can also use those anecdotes to promote the positive bias that reinforce your sound judgment, your ethic, your ability to handle a lot. I saw an interesting stat that said, it wasn't a stat, it was some article, that there are more generations in the workplace today than ever before. I think there's 5 of them. I can't remember them all. Boomers, X, Y, Z, I guess millennials.
Yeah.
And I would think that would help to neutralize biases against one group, because there's just so many different generations competing for their biases. I don't know.
Yeah, that is an interesting thought. I don't know the answer to that.
I'll have to see. Yeah, no, nor I, but there's a lot.
Yeah. And people just continue to live longer and work later. So,
right.
This is something that people will be coming to grips with more and more as time goes on.
That's right. And because of technology, they can work even longer. I mean, people can work from home now when they're ridden, chair-ridden, for instance. I mean, there's things that you can do to prolong your career that maybe you couldn't have otherwise.
Exactly.
Gosh, I could go on about this topic for hours and hours. But let me go on to the next question. What are, this is sort of a rapid fire kind of question. If someone is getting ready to head out on a job search journey, name 2 tools that you believe that no job seeker or career changer can be without?
So I would say still your resume. And now I would say also your LinkedIn profile.
Oh, gosh, I thought you were going to say do some clarity, get some self-assessment and clarity. I thought for sure that was going to be your tool.
But you were saying tool. You were saying tools.
Oh, you can rephrase it.
Yeah. Well, I would say, like if we're not doing it about tools, actually clarity about what you want to do. But then the other would be bone up on what's happening in job search. And,
it's great.
Like you can work with a coach, we're both coachy type people, but like that can really speed you through the process. But if you don't have the funds for that, you can find a local career nonprofit, or you can join a meetup group, like find a job search support group that's got somebody who's trained in careers. I think at this point in time, more and more colleges, I don't know how many, but offer lifetime career services to their grads. Yeah. Or read online. The only issue with that is there's such a ton of information, and people
can be overwhelming
and not know what's reliable. But both you and I have written or write for jobhunt.org. So that's a little plug for one.
That's there you go. And that's a great resource that tackles so many different topics.
Yeah, and has a lot of very strong people writing for them. But there is a lot of information that's available, and so do educate yourself, because I still run into people that are just spending a lot of time applying for jobs online in a very random manner, and then being frustrated. And besides the emotional toll, when you're out of work, each month that you're out of work, you're out of that month's salary. And, so like spending the time upfront to learn what it is you need to be doing is going to save you a tremendous amount of time and stress.
Yeah, pain, you're right, pain and time. And you're just a little bit of education can help you to figure out the point of entry that'll give you the best return. Because to what you said at the beginning, the fundamentals really haven't changed. It's just how you make those initial connections. It used to be through a Rolodex. Now it's through other ways. And just understanding that can help you plan a job search that's quicker.
Yeah.
No, that's just great advice. So it's my favorite question. What is next for you? You're so prolific in writing, sharing on social media, and I know you have an active coaching practice. Do you have anything coming down the pike this year that you want to share?
Actually, my certification in RIM, in the healing, is very new. I just got that this winter. So I haven't even started to promote that. So I think for me personally, that will be new, that I'll be starting to do a rebrand for myself to discuss how I'm offering my services. But otherwise, which, is just an expansion of what I do.
That's right. You're taking another ingredient from the cooktop and throwing it in.
I'm just adding another into the stew. But it's still the same stew. We're throwing in some more carrots and onions.
There you go.
So no, I feel really happy and fulfilled with the work that I'm doing, and I love seeing people figure out what they want to do and go through the change, and the change for them, the happiness, the benefit. It's tangible, and I find that very rewarding.
Well, and what's so, your response just cemented for me the idea that, you're in the same career, you haven't made a change, but that doesn't mean that your position isn't evolving. And for those people that don't like to be stuck, that want flexibility, there's opportunity to grow and evolve a role.
Sure. Yeah. Like
that is worth exploring.
Yeah. So, that is one model. Like you and I are topic experts, and I fulfilled that role working in outplacement, working with people who'd recently been laid off. Then for a while, I had a private practice, and then I moved in to start a college career center. So I got to design programs. Then I got my coach training. I moved out again, had a somewhat different style practice. I've written on career issues. I've spoke. So all of that still fits into the same general career. But
that's right.
But it keeps changing. Yeah.
Yep. No, I love that. No, same goes for me. Mine was with writing. I've written my whole life. That's sort of the consistent thread. But what I write about is very different, and who I write for. Well, Phyllis, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Of course, now all this talk about stew and kitchens has made me very hungry, so it's time to break for lunch. But thank you. You've really just given such great advice and just so practical. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And thanks for the invitation.
Take care.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's skim online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.